The creature snarled as Director Harlow rapped her knuckles against the reinforced glass. Behind him, Eli Bennett clutched his cleaning cart, careful to remain in the shadows of the dimly lit corridor. "Fascinating specimen," Harlow said to the armed guard. 3 months since capture, and she still hasn't broken. Most Proximan warriors committed suicide rather than face imprisonment. The alien woman crouched in the corner of her sterile cell, her luminescent amber eyes tracking every movement. Her skin had the faintest blue undertone, almost pearlescent under the harsh lights. The ridge of bone that crowned her skull was adorned with intricate carvings that Eli found beautiful, though he'd never dare say so aloud. "Tomorrow we begin the neural mapping," Harlow continued. "Perhaps then we'll understand how their hive communication works." The guard shifted nervously. "Sir, after what happened to Dr. Vega, restraints and sedation protocols will be followed to the letter," Harlow snapped. "This facility houses mankind's best chance to understand our enemy. I won't have fear compromising our work." After they departed, Eli wheeled his cart forward. It was his 3rd week on night shift at Nova Research Facility, a remote outpost built hastily after the Proxima War left both civilizations devastated. His security clearance barely allowed him into the high containment wing, authorized only to clean floors and deliver meal trays to the various specimens. This one was different. The others, tissue samples, bizarre fauna from the Proximan homeworld, were scientific curiosities. She was a prisoner of war. Eli slid the food tray through the specialized delivery slot. Standard procedure dictated stepping back immediately, but something made him pause. The alien woman, he'd heard guards call her Specimen P7, hadn't moved from her corner. "You should eat," he said softly, knowing she couldn't understand. "It'll get cold." Her head snapped up, those amber eyes narrowing. The translators had been reverse-engineered from battlefield technology, but the scientists claimed the Proximan's language was too complex, too dependent on subtle frequencies humans couldn't detect. The standard rations looked unappetizing even to him: gray protein cubes and vitamin-enriched water. He glanced at the corridor camera, noting the blinking light was off. Budget cuts meant security footage was motion-activated rather than continuous in lower-priority areas. From his pocket, Eli removed a small packet of dried blueberries, his afternoon snack. With another glance at the camera, he quickly slipped it through the slot. The alien didn't move, but her eyes tracked his every motion. "I'll be back tomorrow," he whispered. Each night for a week, Eli found reasons to linger. He'd mop the same spot repeatedly, studying her when she thought he wasn't looking. She moved with a lethal grace even in confinement, her body strong despite her circumstances. Once, when she thought herself unobserved, he caught her tracing what looked like star charts in the condensation on her cell wall. "She's not just a soldier," he murmured to himself. "She's something more." On the 8th night, Eli arrived to find her cell in disarray. Blood, dark purple rather than red, smeared one wall. Through the glass, he could see her breathing heavily, a cut along her forearm where she'd been forcibly restrained for testing. No medical attention had been provided. The night supervisor was asleep as usual. The guard had stepped away for his hourly patrol. Breaking every protocol, Eli used his access card to enter the small antechamber before her cell. The second door required higher clearance, but the first allowed him to be closer, to speak without the thick corridor walls between them. "You're hurt," he said, pressing his hand against the glass. For the first time, she approached willingly, studying him with an intensity that made his heart race. She placed her 6-fingered hand against the glass opposite his, the purple blood still fresh on her blue-tinted skin. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear through the barrier, but the meaning was clear in her eyes. Curiosity mingled with distrust. It was the first moment of connection, fragile, forbidden, and powerful enough to change everything that would follow. Eli's hands trembled as he prepared the makeshift first aid kit. For 2 weeks, he'd watched P7's wound fester without treatment, a deliberate neglect that made his stomach turn. Today's security rotation gave him 15 minutes while cameras cycled through maintenance mode. "Please don't kill me," he whispered as the antechamber door hissed open. The alien woman, no, he couldn't think of her as just a specimen anymore, watched him with those striking amber eyes. She'd taken to sitting near the glass whenever he appeared, tracking his movements with a predator's focus. He slid the small medical kit through the meal slot. "For your arm," he said, mimicking cleaning a wound on his own forearm. She didn't move, suspicion etched across her features. "The wound looked worse today. purple veins spreading outward from the gash. Infection, or whatever passed for it in her physiology. Eli made a decision that violated every security protocol. He swiped his keycard, technically only authorized for cleaning emergencies, and entered the override code he'd memorized from watching the medical staff. With a pneumaticus, the inner door unlocked. The moment he stepped inside, she moved with shocking speed, pinning him against the wall. Her strength was remarkable. Even injured and malnourished, she held him immobile with minimal effort. Her face inches from his, she bared teeth that were unervingly similar to human ones, save for the pronounced canines. "I'm helping," he gasped, keeping his body language submissive. "Your arm." "Infection." She inhaled deeply, as if scenting him, her luminescent eyes narrowing. After a long moment, she released him and stepped back, extending her injured arm with what seemed like reluctant curiosity. Hand shaking, Eli cleaned the wound with antiseptic. She didn't flinch, though he knew it must sting. Up close, he noticed delicate patterns across her skin, not tattoos, but natural variations like marble veining. "Beautiful. My name is Eli," he said softly, applying antibiotic ointment. "Eli Bennett." She watched him work, then placed her hand over her chest. "Mira." The word emerged musical and strange from her throat, followed by a series of harmonic tones his human ears couldn't fully process. "Mira," he repeated, smiling. "It's nice to meet you." The next evening, Eli smuggled in a real meal, roasted chicken and vegetables from the staff cafeteria. Mira approached cautiously, sniffing the offering before taking a careful bite. Her eyes widened, and she devoured the rest with surprising delicacy despite her obvious hunger. Small comforts followed. A soft blanket to replace the thin standard issue. A data pad loaded with basic language programs, slipped through when guard rotations changed. A small flowering plant placed just outside her cell where she could see it grow. For 3 weeks, their interaction remained limited to these silent exchanges, offerings made and accepted with increasing trust. Eli learned to read her expressions, the slight tilt of her head that signaled curiosity, the low rumble in her throat when scientists approached that wasn't quite a growl but a warning. On the 26th night, he arrived to find her curled in pain on the floor of her cell. Yesterday's neural mapping experiments had left her trembling, small seizures racking her powerful frame. Without hesitation, Eli entered her cell again, this time carrying a thermal blanket and anti-seizure medication stolen from the medical bay. He expected resistance when he cradled her head in his lap, but instead, she leaned into his touch. "This will help," he whispered, holding a cup of water to her lips after administering the medicine. As the medication took effect, her breathing steadied. Her hand found his, 6 fingers interlacing with his 5 in a grip that started as desperate but softened into something else. Something that made his heart race. "Why?" she asked, the universal question in a voice rough from disuse. Eli didn't have a practiced answer. "Because you're a person," he said simply, "not a specimen." She studied his face with those remarkable eyes, searching for deception and finding none. Then she did something that changed everything. She reached up and traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers, exploring the alien contours of his human face with the same wonder he felt toward her. "Eli," she said, his name transformed by her melodic accent into something new. That night, as he reluctantly left her cell, something profound had shifted between them. The warmth of her touch lingered on his skin long after he'd returned to his sparse quarters, a sensation both thrilling and terrifying in its implications. Neither captive nor captor now recognized the dangerous territory they'd entered, a connection forbidden by both their worlds, yet unstoppable as the tide. 3 moons, Mira said, her finger tracing the shape in the air. "Home." Eli nodded, adding the word to the growing lexicon he kept hidden in his quarters. For 2 months now, their nightly lessons had evolved into something both of them craved, a bridge between worlds. She taught him fragments of her language, complex and tonal, challenging his human vocal cords, while he helped her refine her rapidly improving English. "Your world sounds beautiful," he whispered, careful to stay in the camera's blind spot. He'd timed his cleaning rounds to coincide with the security system's scheduled maintenance window, giving them precious, unmonitored minutes. "Was beautiful," she corrected, a shadow crossing her features. "Before war." The guilt that flashed across Eli's face didn't go unnoticed. Neither could definitively say which species had struck first, but both had suffered catastrophic losses. Earth's major coastal cities lay in ruins. Her homeworld's ecosystem teetered on collapse. "Our scholar," Mira continued, surprising him. not warrior. Navigation specialist. She gestured upward. Stars speak to my people. This explained the star charts she'd drawn in condensation. Not a soldier, but a navigator, conscripted like so many others when war erupted. I was a teacher, Eli admitted. Elementary school. Then the draft came. Her head tilted in that way he found endearing. Why here now? Dishonorable discharge, he said, the old shame resurfacing. I refused an order to fire on civilian settlements. He smiled ruefully. Turns out having a conscience is a liability in war. Myra's expression softened. She reached through the food slot, the closest they could come to contact with the cameras operational, and placed her six-fingered hand against the glass. Eli matched her gesture from the other side. Among my people, she said carefully, such mercy brings highest honor. Something warm bloomed in his chest at her words. The gap between their worlds suddenly seemed less vast. Their conversations grew longer as Myra's English improved. Director Harlow and the scientist remained baffled by her continued resistance to their communication attempts, unaware she spoke freely, but only to Eli. They use wrong approach, she explained one night. Our language requires empathic resonance. Cannot be forced. Empathic resonance. Feeling connection, she tried to explain, frustration evident. Words carry emotion waves. Without trust, words empty. Eli nodded slowly. Like how the same words can mean different things depending on how they're said. Yes. Her face lit up at being understood. But deeper. Much deeper. During one midnight conversation, Mira hesitantly asked about human mating rituals, making Eli choke on his coffee. Proximity determines compatibility, she explained, deadly serious. Your scent carries markers my people recognize instinctively. And what does my scent tell you? He asked, half joking, half terrified of her answer. Her amber eyes locked with his. That you would be valued made among my people. The silence that followed thrummed with unspoken possibility. Mira, he began, heart pounding, but the warning beep of cameras reactivating cut him short. That night, in his quarters, Eli stared at the ceiling, replaying her words. He'd never felt this way about anyone. This consuming awareness, this constant pull. But she was literally alien to him, from a world at war with his own. Whatever was growing between them was impossible by every rational measure. And yet, when she looked at him with those luminous eyes, nothing had ever felt more right. 3 nights later, Eli came to her cell carrying a small device. Music, he explained, activating it. The haunting notes of a cello concerto filled the space between them. Mira closed her eyes, her body swaying slightly. When she opened them again, they glistened with moisture, the first tears he'd seen her shed. My people have this too, she whispered. Different, but same feeling. She began to move, her body flowing in what was unmistakably dance, though like nothing he'd seen before. It told a story he couldn't translate but felt in his bones, longing, hope, connection. Without thinking, Eli placed his palm against the glass. Mira finished her dance directly opposite him, her hand meeting his, separated only by the transparent barrier. I feel you, she said softly. Through this. She tapped the glass. Feel your heart rhythm. Your warmth. Is that part of the empathic resonance? He asked. No, she answered, her eyes never leaving his. That is something else. Something just for us. In that moment, the glass between them seemed both an insurmountable barrier and the thinnest of veils. What had begun as compassion had transformed into something neither of them had words for, in any language. It was reckless, what Eli planned. 3 months of careful timing had revealed patterns in security. A 12-minute window during shift changes when the backup generators were tested, temporarily disrupting the cell's electronic locks before emergency systems engaged. Tonight, he brought no supplies, no language lessons, no small comforts. Tonight, he needed something else. You shouldn't be here, Mira whispered as the cell door hissed open. Her concern wasn't for herself, but for him. Discovery would mean imprisonment, possibly worse. I know, he answered simply. They stood facing each other, no barrier between them for the first time since he'd treated her wound. Mira was taller than he was by several inches, her presence both intimidating and magnetic. Up close, the fine luminescent patterns beneath her skin shifted with her breathing, casting soft blue light in the dimness. May I? He asked, hand raised hesitantly toward her face. She nodded, barely breathing as his fingers traced the elegant bone structure of her cheek, the raised ridge that crowned her forehead. Her skin was warmer than human temperature, with a texture like polished suede. "Your people fear touch?" she asked, noticing his quickened breath. "No," he smiled. "But it means something. When it's someone who matters." Her six-fingered hand mirrored his exploration, mapping the alien contours of his face with gentle curiosity. "Among my people, first touch is sacred. Reveals truth between souls." "And what truth do you see?" he whispered. Her luminous eyes held his. "That you fear, yet come anyway. That you desire, yet respect boundaries." Her thumb brushed his lower lip, sending electricity through him. "That you see me as Mira, not enemy." It happened without conscious thought. Eli leaned forward, closing the final distance between them. Their lips met, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. Her mouth was warmer than he expected, the kiss both familiar and thrillingly foreign. Something hummed between them, a resonance he felt rather than heard. When they finally separated, Myra's eyes had darkened to deep amber, her breath quick. "This is how humans show affection. One way," he managed, his heart thundering. She smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "My people have similar customs, though usually with more bioluminescence." As if responding to her words, the patterns beneath her skin pulsed brighter, spreading across her temples and down her neck in mesmerizing waves. Eli watched, entranced, as she took his hand and placed it over her heart. Its rhythm was faster than a human's, a quick double beat that synchronized with the light patterns. "This only happens with strong emotion," she explained softly. "Joy, fear, desire. Which is it now?" he asked, though he already knew. Instead of answering, she drew him closer, initiating their second kiss with newfound confidence. This time, there was no hesitation on either side. His arms encircled her waist as hers wrapped around his shoulders, erasing any remaining distance. The warning chime of systems reactivating broke them apart far too soon. 11 minutes, Eli whispered against her temple. "Never enough." She pressed her forehead to his, an intimate gesture among her people. "Worth risk." Over the following weeks, they stole moments between security cycles. Brief touches, whispered confidences, and increasingly passionate encounters that left them both aching for more time, more freedom. Eli learned the sensitive spots along the ridges of her spine that made her luminescence flare brightly. Mira discovered the effect of her slightly rough fingertips tracing paths across his skin. Cultural differences created moments of awkwardness and laughter, like when she attempted a traditional proximate greeting that nearly dislocated his shoulder, or when his attempt to pronounce an endearment in her language produced sounds that translated to something thoroughly unromantic. But there were perfect moments too, lying face to face on her narrow cot, limbs intertwined, speaking in whispers about the lives that had before war changed everything. Moments when the differences between their species seemed inconsequential compared to their shared desires and dreams. "If we'd met differently," Eli mused one night, tracing the luminescent patterns along her collarbone, "on some neutral world, as explorers maybe, we would still find each other," she finished with certainty. Some connections transcend circumstance. The depth of feeling between them should have frightened him, its intensity, its impossibility. Instead, it became the fixed point around which his world revolved. Their precious equilibrium shattered the night Eli arrived to find Mira collapsed on the floor of her cell, her luminescence flickering erratically, skin burning with fever. "What did they do?" he demanded, cradling her trembling form. "New tests," she managed between shallow breaths. "Neural probes. Searching for hive communication centers." Rage and helplessness battled within him. Without medical training specific to her physiology, he couldn't properly help her. But the facility doctors would only see her as a specimen to be maintained, not a person in pain. Through the night, he bathed her burning skin with cool cloths, whispering reassurances as she drifted between consciousness and delirium. In lucid moments, she gripped his hand with desperate strength. "If I die," she began once. "You won't," he interrupted fiercely. "I won't let you." As dawn approached, her fever finally broke. Exhausted, they lay together on the floor of her cell, her head resting on his chest, his arms protectively around her. "I love you," he whispered into the crown of her head, using words he'd never expected to say in such circumstances, or perhaps at all. "I don't know if that means anything to your people." She silenced him with a gentle finger against his lips, then pressed her palm to his chest, directly over his heart. In her language, she spoke a phrase he didn't recognize, except for his name embedded within the melodic sounds. "Heartbound," she translated softly. "More permanent than your love." Among my people, it means our essences are entwined beyond death. The intensity of her words should have terrified him. Instead, he felt only rightness, as if some cosmic puzzle piece had finally clicked into place. Heartbound, he repeated. The alien word clumsy on his tongue, but the sentiment perfect. As security systems reactivated and he reluctantly prepared to leave, Mira pressed something into his palm, a small crystalline object that pulsed with inner light that matched the patterns on her skin. Part of me, she explained. To keep close when we're separated. Eli clutched it like the treasure it was, unaware that their time was running out faster than either could imagine. Eli knew something was wrong the moment he entered the high-security wing. Extra guards patrolled the corridor, and technicians hustled equipment toward the containment area. His hand instinctively closed around the crystal pendant hidden beneath his uniform. Myra's gift, warm against his skin. Bennett, Dr. Harlow's sharp voice made him freeze. Perfect timing. We need this area sanitized immediately. Special transport arrives at 0600. Transport, sir? Eli kept his voice neutral despite the dread building inside him. Specimen P-7 is being relocated to Meridian Military Research, Harlow said, checking something on his tablet. General Whalen's team believes they've identified exploitable weaknesses in Proximan neural architecture. Eli's blood ran cold. Everyone knew what happened at Meridian. The facility was notorious for experimental procedures that pushed ethical boundaries beyond breaking. Subjects rarely survived. When does the specimen leave? He managed. Tomorrow morning. The neural suppressant protocol begins at midnight. Harlow looked at him curiously. Are you feeling all right, Bennett? You look pale. Just tired, sir. I'll get this area cleaned right away. As Harlow walked away, Eli fought to keep his breathing steady. Midnight, just 6 hours from now. Whatever they planned would render Mira unconscious, helpless during transport. There would be no opportunity to help her once the procedure began. He had to act tonight. Security was tighter than usual, but Eli had spent months learning the facility's rhythms. During dinner rotation, he slipped into the staff medical bay and filled a syringe with a powerful sedative. For maintenance, he acquired an access badge from a carelessly hung jacket. The final piece, security codes for the exterior doors, came from the night supervisor's desk when an alarm in another section drew him away. At 11:30 p.m., Eli approached Myra's cell for what the facility records would show as a routine cleaning. Her eyes widened when she saw his expression. They're moving you to Meridian tomorrow, he said without preamble, voice low. We have to leave. Tonight. Instead of the fear or excitement he expected, Myra's face showed resigned acceptance. You can't risk this, Eli. They'll imprison you. Or worse. I don't care. I do. She pressed her hand against the glass. Your life has value. So does yours, he insisted. And mine means nothing if they destroy you. The raw emotion in his voice silenced her objections. She nodded once, decision made. What's your plan? 20 minutes later, alarms blared throughout the facility as a maintenance accident flooded the West Wing laboratories. In the ensuing chaos, security protocols defaulted to emergency settings, including a momentary reset of the containment cell systems. The instant the locks disengaged, Eli was there, Myra's hand clasped tightly in his as they raced through service corridors toward the loading docks. They encountered a single guard, whom Eli reluctantly sedated with the stolen syringe. Almost there, he whispered as they reached the vehicle bay. A maintenance truck sat idling, routine supply delivery. The driver had stepped away, keys still in the ignition. It was their only chance. As Eli helped Mira into the passenger seat, floodlights suddenly illuminated the bay. Director Harlow stood in the doorway, flanked by security personnel. Bennett, he shouted. Step away from the specimen. Time seemed to slow. Eli looked at Mira, then at the armed guards raising their weapons. In her eyes, he saw the same certainty he felt in his bones. She's not a specimen, he called back. Her name is Mira. Without further hesitation, he slammed the door and gunned the engine. Bullets pinged off the reinforced delivery truck as they crashed through the security gate and into the night. Dawn found them deep in the mountains, the stolen truck abandoned miles back. They traveled through the night on foot, using Myra's superior night vision to navigate the rugged terrain. Now, as the first light crested the peaks, they paused on a rocky outcropping to rest and plan. They'll hunt us, Mira said, her luminescence dimmed to conserve energy. Both our peoples will view this as betrayal. Eli took her hand, their fingers interlacing in what had become a familiar comfort. Then we find somewhere neither can reach us. Where would that be in this divided universe? Instead of answering, he unfolded a worn map taken from the truck's glove compartment. There's an old scientific outpost near the northern border, abandoned after budget cuts. My cousin worked security there, said the place is fully equipped but off the grid. It won't be forever, Mira cautioned. Eventually, they'll find us. I don't need forever, Eli said, looking into her eyes. I just need enough time to find a way forward, for both our peoples. She touched his face, tracing now familiar features with gentle fingertips. You still believe peace is possible? I have to, he answered. We're proof that coexistence isn't just possible, it's necessary. The crystalline pendant she'd given him caught the morning light, refracting rainbow patterns across their joined hands. My people have a concept, she said softly, of pathmakers, those who forge new connections where none existed before. Is that what we are? Pathmakers. Her smile was radiant, full of a hope he hadn't seen since they met. Perhaps. Or perhaps just two beings who refused to be enemies when they could be lovers instead. The sun climbed higher as they continued their journey northward. Behind them lay two civilizations still nursing the wounds of war, clinging to hatred and fear. Ahead lay uncertainty and danger, but also possibility. As the outpost finally came into view, a cluster of utilitarian buildings nestled in a hidden valley, Eli felt something unfamiliar unfurling in his chest. Not safety, certainly. Not security. Freedom, he realized. The freedom to choose compassion over protocol. To recognize personhood across the artificial boundaries of species. To forge connection where others saw only threat. Myra's hand tightened around his as they approached their temporary sanctuary. The crystal at his chest pulsed in rhythm with her luminescence, both beating in time with his human heart. Whatever comes, she said, her words both promise and prayer, we face it together. Eli nodded, pulling her close as they stepped toward their uncertain future, two refugees from a conflict neither had chosen, pioneers of a peace neither had imagined possible. Until a human had offered kindness to a caged alien woman, and she had trusted him enough to take his hand and follow.